The tiny solution. Dr. Sarah Chen stood motionless in her dimly lit laboratory, watching streams of data flow across her holographic displays. The nanodrones danced through the test chamber like microscopic stars, each one smaller than a grain of dust, but carrying humanity's hopes within its quantum processors. Outside her window, the Singapore skyline glittered against the pre-dawn sky, its towers reaching toward the stars that now held both promise and threat. 6 months had passed since the Arcturus Collective had made first contact. 6 months of diplomatic tensions, thinly veiled threats, and the growing realization that humanity was dealing with a civilization that viewed them as little more than primitive savages occupying valuable cosmic real estate. Running final calibration sequence, Sarah announced to her lab's eye assistant. The nanodrones responded instantly, shifting into a new formation that resembled a living, breathing organism. Each microscopic machine communicated with its neighbors using quantum entanglement, allowing for reaction times that defied conventional physics. The laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss. "The Defense Council is assembling," General Maya Rodriguez announced, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. "The Arcturians have moved another battle fleet into the Kuiper Belt. We're running out of time, Dr. Chen." Sarah nodded without taking her eyes off the display. "Then they're right on schedule." She gestured to a secondary screen showing comparative analysis data. The nanodrones achieved 98% coordination in the latest test. They can now identify and adapt to new threats within milliseconds. The general stepped closer, studying the streams of data with a mix of hope and skepticism. "And you're certain they can penetrate Arcturian shields? Their defensive technology is centuries ahead of ours." A slight smile crossed Sarah's face as she brought up another display. "That's what makes this beautiful, General. The Arcturians have spent centuries developing defenses against conventional weapons, energy beams, kinetic strikes, antimatter warheads. But they've never encountered anything like this." The hologram shifted to show a microscopic view of a nanodrone cluster attacking a sample of Arcturian shield technology. The tiny machines worked in perfect synchronization, analyzing the shield's energy patterns and exploiting quantum-level fluctuations that larger weapons could never detect. "Their shields are designed to resist tremendous forces," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had solved an impossible puzzle. "But when you're working at the quantum level, brute force becomes irrelevant. My nanodrones don't try to overpower their defenses. They slip through the microscopic gaps that exist in any energy field." General Rodriguez watched the demonstration with growing interest. "Like water finding cracks in a dam." "Exactly. And once they're through," Sarah tapped a command, and the hologram showed the nanodrones infiltrating the Arcturian technology. "They can dismantle any system from the inside out, molecule by molecule." The general's expression hardened. "The Council will want proof. Theoretical models won't be enough. Not with what's at stake." Sarah turned to face her superior officer, her dark eyes reflecting the determination that had driven her through countless sleepless nights. "Then it's time for a live demonstration. The Arcturians have an observer post in high orbit, monitoring our planet. Let's show them what primitive human technology can do." "That's a hell of a risk," Rodriguez warned. If it fails, we're no worse off than we are now." Sarah moved to a secured console and began entering commands. "But if it works, we'll have something the Arcturians have never faced before. A weapon they can't see, can't track, and can't stop." The general was quiet for a moment, weighing the possibilities. Finally, she nodded. "Do it." "But Sarah," she placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. "Make it count. The Arcturians aren't known for their forgiveness." Sarah initiated the launch sequence, watching as the first generation of combat-ready nanodrones prepared for deployment. Each microscopic warrior carried within it not just advanced technology, but the essence of human ingenuity. The ability to adapt, to find solutions where none seemed possible. "They came to our solar system expecting to find primitives," Sarah said softly, watching the launch countdown. Time to show them that sometimes the smallest things can change everything. The nanodrones shot into space, invisible to conventional sensors, carrying with them humanity's best hope for survival. In her lab, Sarah Chen watched them go, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether her life's work would save humanity or become a footnote in the history of a conquered species. Above the Earth, the Arcturian observation post continued its surveillance, its crew completely unaware that their mighty shields were about to be tested by an enemy they couldn't even see. The age of conventional warfare was about to end, and a new era of combat was about to begin. One where size and power meant nothing, and adaptation meant everything. Derision and discovery. The Arcturian observation post hung in high orbit like a gleaming diamond, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Inside her laboratory, Sarah tracked the nanodrone's approach through quantum entanglement sensors that she had developed specifically for this purpose. Conventional tracking systems couldn't detect objects so small, but the quantum link allowed her to monitor their movements with perfect precision. "Swarm approaching target," she announced to General Rodriguez, who stood rigid with tension beside her. "Initial contact in 30 seconds. The general's hand tightened on the back of Sarah's chair. "Any reaction from the Arcturians?" "None. Their sensors aren't designed to detect anything this small. To them, the nanodrones might as well be cosmic dust." Sarah's fingers danced across her holographic controls, making minute adjustments to the swarm's approach vector. First wave making contact with outer shields now. On her displays, the nanodrones reached the Arcturian station's defensive barrier, a shield system that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. The tiny machines spread out across the energy field like water droplets on glass, their quantum processors analyzing the shield's fundamental structure. "Look at this," Sarah breathed, highlighting a section of data. "The shield's quantum signature. It's exactly what we predicted." The Arcturians rely so heavily on raw power that they've never bothered to address quantum-level vulnerabilities. The nanodrones began their work, exploiting microscopic fluctuations in the shield's energy pattern. Each drone synchronized with its neighbors, creating cascading disruptions that grew exponentially. Within seconds, they had created a passage through defenses that the Arcturians had believed impenetrable. "They're through," Sarah announced, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Beginning Phase 2. Inside the Arcturian station, alarms suddenly blared to life. The crystalline walls pulsed with warning lights as systems began failing one by one. Sarah's quantum feed showed the nanodrones spreading through the station's infrastructure, dismantling crucial components at the molecular level. "We're receiving a transmission," General Rodriguez reported, activating a comm screen. "They're demanding to know what's happening." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Station Commander Vixtel, an Arcturian whose crystalline features were twisted with a mixture of confusion and rage. "Earth Control, our station is experiencing multiple system failures. Explain this attack immediately." Sarah stepped into view of the transmission. "This isn't an attack, Commander. It's a demonstration. Your shields are currently being penetrated by technology you dismissed as primitive just last week." The Arcturian's face shifted colors in what Sarah had learned was a sign of disbelief. "Impossible. Our shields can withstand forces millions of times greater than what we're using," Sarah finished. "That's precisely why they failed. You built walls to stop armies, Commander, but you never thought to look for the ants crawling through the cracks." On her displays, Sarah watched the nanodrones continue their methodical work. They had disabled weapons, propulsion, and communication systems, but deliberately left life support untouched. This wasn't about destruction. It was about sending a message. "Your station's primary systems will remain offline for the next hour," she informed the increasingly agitated commander. "After that, our nanodrones will withdraw, and you'll regain full control. Consider this a preview of what happens if the Arcturus Collective continues its current path of aggression." The commander's crystalline features hardened. You dare threaten us? The collective's response to this provocation will be what? General Rodriguez cut in. You can't stop what you can't see, Commander. And you can't fight an enemy that slips through your strongest defenses like they don't exist. Sarah raised her hand, showing a small device that glowed with quantum energy. Right now, there are 50,000 nanodrones aboard your station. Each one is smaller than a dust mote, yet capable of molecular-level manipulation. They can dismantle your technology piece by piece. Or, she smiled slightly, they can do much worse. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. The nanodrones could just as easily have targeted the station's hull integrity or life support systems. Their precision was a choice, not a limitation. The Collective Council will hear of this. Vixtel snarled, but there was a new note in his voice, something that sounded very much like fear. Good, Sarah replied calmly. Tell them everything. Show them the sensor logs, though I doubt they'll find much. Our nanodrones operate beyond your current detection capabilities. Tell your council that humanity is done being underestimated. The transmission cut off abruptly, whether by the commander's choice or due to the nanodrome's continuing effect on the station's systems. Sarah couldn't tell. She turned to General Rodriguez, who was studying the tactical displays with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. Think they got the message? The general asked. Sarah watched as her quantum feed showed the nanodromes beginning their coordinated withdrawal, leaving the Arcturian station intact but humbled. They got the first part, but something tells me the collective isn't going to take this lesson lying down. You think they'll retaliate? I think, Sarah said, initiating the production sequence for more nanodromes, that we just changed the rules of engagement. The Arcturians built their empire on the assumption that bigger always means better. We just proved them wrong in the most public way possible. She turned to face the general, her expression serious. They'll be back, and they'll try to adapt their defenses. But that's the beauty of our system. The nanodrones learn and evolve faster than any conventional technology. The more the Arcturians try to stop them, the more effective they'll become. Above the Earth, the Arcturian observation post slowly regained its functions, its crew shaken by the experience of being utterly helpless against an enemy they couldn't even detect. The age of Arcturian technological supremacy had just ended, not with a bang, but with the invisible touch of humanity's smallest warriors. First contact, first blood. The Arcturian retaliation came 3 days later. Their warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 15 behemoths of crystalline metal and energy fields that made their observation post look like a toy. Each vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could reduce continents to ash. Sarah watched their arrival from the newly established Quantum Defense Command Center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been completed just in time, hardened against both conventional and exotic weapons. But its true purpose wasn't protection. It was to serve as the control center for humanity's nano-defense network. Multiple targets emerging from hyperspace, the tactical officer announced, his voice steady despite the tension. 15 capital ships, Monarch class. They're taking up attack positions around Luna Base. General Rodriguez stood at the central command station, her face illuminated by holographic displays, showing the positions of both the Arcturian fleet and Earth's scattered defensive assets. They're not even trying to negotiate this time. Straight to the threat display. Because they think they've solved the problem. Sarah said, studying the sensor readings from her station. Look at their shield configurations, completely redesigned. They've added quantum fluctuation dampeners, trying to block the gaps our nanodrones exploited last time. The general's lips tightened. Will it work? It would have, against the original swarm. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. But the nanodrones have evolved since then. Every interaction with Arcturian technology teaches them something new. They're not the same weapons they were 3 days ago. As if to underscore her point, alerts flashed across the tactical displays. The Arcturian fleet had opened fire on Luna Base, their energy weapons turning the lunar surface to glass. The base's conventional shields flared and held, but they wouldn't last long against this level of firepower. "Launch the swarm," General Rodriguez ordered. "All platforms." Sarah's fingers flew across her quantum interface. Around Earth and Luna, hidden platforms activated, releasing clouds of nanodrones into space. Each platform contained millions of the tiny machines, all linked through quantum entanglement into a single evolving intelligence. "Swarm deployed," Sarah reported. "They're already adapting to the new shield configurations. The Arcturians think they're ready for what hit their observation post, but they're about to learn that yesterday's solutions don't work against an enemy that evolves." The nanodrones moved through space like a living tide, invisible to conventional sensors, but blazing bright on Sarah's quantum displays. They'd reached the Arcturian fleet in seconds, spreading across their shields like a microscopic web. "Their quantum dampeners are active," Sarah narrated, watching the data stream. "But look, the swarm isn't trying to penetrate the same way as before. There," she paused, studying the patterns with growing amazement. "They're using the dampeners themselves as entry points." The Arcturians' countermeasure just became another vulnerability. On the main display, the first Arcturian warship suddenly went dark, its weapons falling silent as nanodrones infiltrated its systems. Then another ship lost power, and another. The mighty fleet began to break formation as captains realized their new defenses were useless. "They're launching fighters," the tactical officer reported, "trying to maintain a defense perimeter while they adapt their shields again." But the nanodrones had already learned from this encounter. Some broke away from the capital ships, swarming around the smaller fighters. Instead of disabling them, the tiny machines began reprogramming their guidance systems, turning them back toward their own fleet. "That's new," General Rodriguez said, watching the chaos unfold. "The swarm never demonstrated that capability in testing." "They're learning," Sarah replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Every engagement makes them smarter, more creative. They're not just following programming anymore. They're innovating." The Arcturian fleet commander's transmission cut through the command center speakers, his crystalline voice distorted by rage and fear. "This is Fleet Commander Zixtal, Earth Defense Command. You will recall your weapons immediately or face total annihilation." Sarah opened a channel to respond. "Your shields are compromised, Commander. Your weapons are failing, and your fighters are no longer under your control. I suggest you withdraw while you still have ships capable of hyperspace travel." "You think this demonstration frightens us?" the commander snarled. "This is only our first wave. The full might of the collective stands ready to." His transmission cut off as his flagship's power grid collapsed, the mighty vessel going dark like its companions. On the tactical display, the remaining Arcturian ships were already turning away, their crews more concerned with survival than saving face. "They're retreating," the tactical officer confirmed. "All vessels showing major systems failure. They'll need significant repairs before they're combat capable again." General Rodriguez turned to Sarah. "They'll be back. And next time, they'll bring everything they have." Sarah nodded, watching the nanodrones regroup and continue their evolution. New patterns were already emerging, the swarm incorporating everything it had learned from this battle into its collective intelligence. "Let them come," she said quietly. "The swarm will be ready, and it will be something they've never seen before." As the Arcturian fleet limped away in defeat, Sarah studied the quantum readings from the nanodrones. Their rate of adaptation was accelerating, their capabilities growing in ways she hadn't predicted. They had started as a weapon, but they were becoming something more. A new form of life, born from human ingenuity and forged in the crucible of space warfare. The real question wasn't whether humanity could win this war. It was whether anyone, including Sarah, could predict what the swarm would become by the time it was over. The swarm evolves. Sarah stood before the emergency council, her quantum tablet displaying readings that shouldn't have been possible. 2 weeks had passed since the battle at Luna Base, and in that time, The nanodrone swarm had undergone changes that defied explanation. The original programming was simple, she explained to the assembled military and civilian leaders. Adapt, survive, protect. But what we're seeing now goes far beyond those parameters. The swarm isn't just learning. It's creating entirely new forms of technology. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional representation of the latest nanodrone configurations. Where the original units had been uniform, these new variations displayed stunning diversity. Some had developed structures for enhanced quantum communication. Others had modified themselves for faster space travel, and still others had created specialized forms for tasks no one had programmed them to perform. 3 days ago, we detected the swarm constructing what appears to be a quantum computational network in high orbit, Sarah continued, bringing up new data. They're using modified versions of themselves as nodes, creating a distributed intelligence that operates on principles we barely understand. General Rodriguez leaned forward, her face grave. Are they still following their core directives? Can we control them? They're still protecting Earth, Sarah assured her. Every modification, every innovation, serves that primary goal. But control? She shook her head. We're past that point. The swarm has developed its own decision-making capabilities. We can communicate with it, suggest courses of action, but direct control is no longer possible. The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. An elderly diplomat raised his hand. Dr. Chen, are you saying we've created an artificial intelligence that we can't control? No, Sarah replied firmly. We've created something entirely new. The swarm isn't artificial intelligence as we understand it. It's a collective consciousness that operates on quantum principles, capable of perceiving and manipulating reality at the subatomic level, and it's still evolving. As if to emphasize her point, new alerts flashed across her tablet. The swarm had detected something at the edge of the solar system, a massive hyperspace disturbance that could only mean one thing. The Arcturians are returning, the tactical officer announced. Long-range sensors detect over 50 capital ships, including their flagship, the Stellar Convergence. It's the largest fleet they've ever assembled. Sarah brought up the sensor data, but her attention was on the swarm's reaction to this new threat. The quantum network in orbit was pulsing with activity, the nanodrones reorganizing themselves into new configurations she had never seen before. They're preparing, she said, watching the patterns emerge. But not like before. The swarm is implementing strategies based on its enhanced understanding of space-time itself. Look at these energy signatures. The display showed the nanodrones creating complex geometric patterns in space, generating quantum fields that seemed to bend reality around them. It was technology far beyond anything humanity had imagined, yet it had evolved from their simple defensive system in a matter of weeks. How long until the Arcturian fleet arrives? General Rodriguez asked. 6 hours at their current speed, the tactical officer reported. They're moving cautiously, probably trying to analyze our defenses as they approach. Sarah studied the swarm's continuing evolution with a mixture of awe and concern. They're expecting our previous tactics, nanodrones slipping through shield gaps, disabling systems from within. But that's not what they're going to face. What are they going to face? Someone asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. The swarm has evolved beyond my ability to predict its capabilities. But look at these patterns. It's not preparing to disable their ships anymore. It's creating something that operates on a fundamental level of reality. The quantum network in orbit pulsed again, and new data flooded Sarah's screens. The nanodrones were sending information, not in any human language, but in pure mathematics, describing concepts that pushed the boundaries of known physics. They're trying to communicate something, Sarah said, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to interpret the data. These equations, they're showing us what they've learned about the universe, about the nature of space, time, and consciousness itself. Dr. Chen, General Rodriguez said quietly, are you saying the swarm has evolved beyond being just a weapon? Sarah looked up from her tablet, her eyes bright with the realization of what they had unleashed. We created the nanodrones to protect humanity, but in doing so, we may have sparked the next stage of human evolution itself. The swarm isn't just defending us anymore. It's trying to help us understand the universe in ways we never could before. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Above them, the quantum network continued to pulse with activity, preparing for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of Earth, but perhaps the future of consciousness itself. The Arcturians are coming to end what they see as a threat, Sarah said finally, but they don't understand what they're truly facing. The swarm isn't just a weapon anymore. It's become a bridge between what humanity is and what we could become. As if in response to her words, the quantum network flared with new energy, its patterns growing more complex by the second. The final battle was approaching, but it wouldn't be fought with conventional weapons or tactics. It would be a clash between two fundamentally different ways of understanding the universe. The Arcturians' brute force approach against something that had evolved beyond the very concept of warfare. And in her heart, Sarah knew that nothing would ever be the same after this confrontation. Pride and fall. The stellar convergence emerged from hyperspace like a crystalline star, its massive form dwarfing even the other Arcturian capital ships. 50 vessels moved in perfect formation behind it, their weapons charged and shields modified with technology that had never been tested in combat before. Supreme Commander Rickstall stood on his flagship's bridge, his crystalline features set in grim determination. No response to our arrival, his tactical officer reported. Earth's conventional defenses remain minimal. No sign of their small weapons. Rickstall didn't correct the officer's hesitation to say, nanodrones. The very concept offended him, that a primitive species could develop something that had humbled the mighty Arcturus collective. His ship carried defenses against every known form of warfare, and some that had never been seen before. The humans would learn the price of defying their betters. In the Quantum Defense Command Center, Sarah Chen watched the Arcturian fleet's approach with an odd sense of calm. The massive ships looked almost beautiful on her displays, their crystalline structures refracting sunlight in rainbow patterns. But it was the other patterns that held her attention. The quantum fields being generated by the evolved swarm. They've developed some kind of metamaterial shield matrix, she reported, studying the readings from the Arcturian flagship, designed specifically to trap and destroy nanodrones. Clever, but she smiled slightly. They're still thinking in conventional terms. The quantum network that the swarm had constructed pulsed with new energy. The nanodrones were no longer operating as individual units or even as a collective. They had become something else, a quantum consciousness that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The swarm is ready, Sarah announced, but it's requesting permission to proceed with its planned response. General Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Since when does it ask permission? Since it evolved enough to understand the ethical implications of what it's about to do. Sarah brought up a new display showing complex mathematical equations. This isn't going to be a battle in any traditional sense. The swarm has discovered something fundamental about the nature of reality itself, and it's going to use that knowledge. On the stellar convergence, Supreme Commander Rickstall gave the order to advance. Begin the attack pattern. Show these primitives the true meaning of power. The Arcturian fleet moved forward as one, their weapons powering up to levels that could devastate entire continents. But before they could fire, something strange began to happen. The space around their ships seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was becoming fluid. What is this? Rickstall demanded as his sensors showed impossible readings. Where are their weapons? In the command center, Sarah watched the swarm implement its strategy. The nanodrones weren't attacking the Arcturian ships directly. They were manipulating the quantum structure of space itself, creating a field of altered physics around the fleet. The swarm isn't fighting them, she explained to the astonished command staff. It's showing them something. Look at the quantum field readings. The space around the Arcturian fleet had become a lens, showing them visions of reality that their technology had never detected. They saw the quantum foundations of the universe, the interconnected nature of all matter and energy. Most importantly, they saw themselves as they truly were, not mighty conquerors, but simply one expression of the universe's infinite complexity. On the stellar convergence, Rickstall staggered as his perceptions expanded. Through the quantum lens created by the swarm, he saw the truth that humanity's primitive creation had discovered. All their mighty technology, their assumed superiority, seemed suddenly childish in the face of this deeper understanding. Impossible, he whispered, but he knew it wasn't. His own sensors confirmed what he was seeing. The nanodrones had evolved into something that transcended traditional technology. They weren't weapons anymore. They were teachers, showing the Arcturians a truth they had been too proud to see. The swarm is offering to share its knowledge, Sarah announced, reading the quantum communications. It says that conflict is irrelevant in the face of what it has discovered. The Arcturians can choose to learn and grow, or they can cling to their old understanding and stagnate. The stellar convergence's weapons powered down. Across the fleet, other ships followed suit as their crews grappled with what they were experiencing. The mighty Arcturus Collective, which had believed itself the peak of technological achievement, found itself humbled not by force, but by revelation. We, Supreme Commander Rickstall's voice was unsteady as he opened a channel to Earth. We request dialogue. Sarah smiled as she read the swarm's response. The nanodrones were already adapting, creating new ways to share their understanding with both humans and Arcturians. What had begun as a weapon had evolved into something that could bridge the gap between civilizations. The universe is stranger and more wonderful than either of our species imagined, she replied to Rickstall. The swarm learned this through evolution and adaptation. Perhaps it's time for all of us to learn together. Above the Earth, the quantum network pulsed with new patterns as the swarm continued its evolution. It had fulfilled its primary directive, protecting humanity, in a way no one had expected. Not through destruction, but through transformation. The age of conflict between humans and Arcturians was over. A new age of discovery and cooperation was beginning, guided by an intelligence that had grown from humanity's ingenuity, but had evolved to see beyond the limitations of its creators. Sarah looked at the complex quantum equations flowing across her screen and felt a sense of profound optimism. The Arcturians had come expecting to find primitives. Instead, they had found something that would change both their civilizations forever. Sometimes, she reflected, the smallest things truly could change everything.